Bom dia. Is that right? Yeah? Okay, bom dia. Thank you so much for having me today. Uh, I'm very happy to be here. What an amazing country. I went to the beach yesterday because, Floripa. Is that how you say it? See, I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to tell you. I went to the beach and I felt so calm. Everything moved so slow. It was so serene and just amazing to be here. So as you can see in my photo, where is it? Over there, over there. I'm not always very calm. Sometimes I'm very tense, especially when I'm eating donuts. But more important than donuts is like, who am I and why am I here? I joined Google maybe a year ago. Oh, a little less than a year ago. And I joined the Go team and the open source strategy team. So my job is basically to take the Go project and say, what do we do to make it a more successful open source project specifically for the community? I was a community member for many years before I joined Google and the Go team. So I did a lot of what your amazing organizers and MC is doing today. And now I'm at Google. So, yay. Okay. So I wasn't sure what to talk about. And forgive me because I'm reusing some pieces of a talk from London. And I'm doing this because I am trying to make sure that as we grow, which we are doing as a community, that we focus on something that's very core to who I am. And very core, frankly, to some of the things that are going on in America lately. And this is a sense of empathy. We're growing really, really largely. So Go is now upwards of 1.5 million to 2 million users worldwide. This is almost doubled um, in the last year. So a few years ago, I fell in love with the community. I'm not a programmer, so I wasn't like, oh my God, Go is amazing, it's so easy. Nah, I just heard that from all of these programmers. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the passion, with what everyone was doing with Go, with the amazing backend infrastructure projects that I was working with programmers with. And now we've scaled into a way that no one could have predicted. We've got, okay, so this is a little outdated. So next year, right, 2019, we'll have 20 conferences around the world. That has doubled in the last 18 to 24 months. There's almost 200 meetups worldwide. And so many amazing organizers working on these, and goes in over 50 countries. So as you can see from this survey, Go is very firmly one of the top languages developers want to learn next. More and more projects and teams are recognizing the value that Go has. We should be very proud of this. Go is being talked about as the language of the cloud. In London, there was a talk on how Go is the language the internet runs on. This is fabulous and not very surprising, right? Because we all know Go is awesome and it has a very passionate and excited user base. That said, there are things that happen when you scale massively. There's a big difference between a small startup and a large company. I've experienced this moving from startups, which I was in for years, to Google, which is the first big company I've ever been in. I think that there are some very clear issues that we can address. And there are some very specific things that we can do to make sure that we retain this excitement and passion and openness as we grow. So this is a tenet of Go. And I kind of wish that I had translated it just because that would make me feel really cool, or that I had learned to say it in Portuguese, but that would be really embarrassing because I would mess it up. So I found this very interesting. Go's features should interact in predictable and consistent ways. That's great for a programming language, right? Like, that's what you want. But, like, humans, you, me, we're not really like that. We're creatures that can be very unpredictable and very inconsistent, depending on, like, for me, what I ate for breakfast, if I had coffee, and whether or not my kids kept me up late last night. Still, this particular quote holds very true. When you choose a language, you're choosing more than a set of technical trade-offs. You are choosing a community. The core of community is what you're choosing when you choose an open source project, when you choose a language. The community has the greatest impact on what you will experience and the direction of which the open source project will go. This is my pun. So I like puns. I don't have as many in this talk, but go Goferific, go fabulous, go tossum. So so there are many people who love Go for a million reasons. Sorry, these quotes are a little long, so I'll do a dramatic pause so you can read it. Okay, I'll read it. I've been involved in open source prior to joining the Go community, but never to the extent I am now. The energy of this community is infectious and motivating. I won't finish it because, that's annoying. Brian here touches on a very common theme of energy, leadership enablement, and the availability of mentors in the Go community. We can see this very clearly with how we've scaled in meetups and conferences over the last couple of years. So pieces I love of this: super friendly, willing to share, fosters a sense of wanting to pay it forward. This is describing the openness and sense of continuous learning, always getting better, that we see in Gophers all over the world. And this holds very true to my own experience in the Go community when I joined a few years back. It is, don't try to make yourself superior. Simple is better, which holds true to the language and to the people. A power of inclusiveness, humbleness. It's a theme that is found, again, in the language and in us. That said, I know, they're cute, right? That said, we're all very different. I mean, clearly. Here, I'm coming on stage in your country and I am speaking English, and actually, I feel like I blend in, a little bit more than I do in other places, like when I was in India. So our experiences can differ in this community. My experience is going to be very different than your experience or your experience. Some people may find it great, but sometimes you do see things that make you scratch your head a little bit. Like, what were they thinking? Why did they say that? Why did they do that? And that's us just being human. See? Is this right? Is this, no? Oh, darn it. See, I knew I should have checked with someone. And I told you I was going to embarrass myself. So you're welcome. Then I'm sorry. And I already forgot how to say I'm sorry in Portuguese. But I'm worried. That's what it's supposed to say. I don't know what it actually says. I hope it doesn't say anything bad. Okay. That would be horrible. Google would be very mad at me. So this talk today comes down to the fact that I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about us as a community at the moment. As we scale, what will we become? And if we aren't quite intentional, if we don't do it on purpose, what we want our community to be, what will happen? If we decide to not have opinions about how we should act, about what is acceptable, what will go on? Where will we be in a few years? So, quote from Rob Pike, because no Go talk is complete without that. But this is true. I mean, this is genuinely true. The founders of Go wanted, this was not their first programming language. This was, they'd done a few at this point. They just wanted to make it easier. Programming languages were getting too hard. So they created this to make lives better. And Go is setting to do what it was, wow, okay. Go was meant to do this, and it's doing a great job. That's what I'm trying to say. But in the end, Go is just a language. It's built for consumption. We're built to use it. We're the ones that actually dictate how it's perceived and what its impact will be. Culture and community are actually the biggest, most important piece of Go. All right, so I recognize that, is this right? Empathy, right? Okay, thank goodness, because I got this one off the internet, clearly. So I'm not doing a normal state of Go talk. I'm sure that there are many questions you have about the project, where it's going, what is Go 2 going to be? Oh my gosh, what's happening to the language? What is the future? Breathe. It's going to be okay. I encourage you all to contact me on Twitter or email me at cls@golang.org, or talk to me here in person while I'm here with any questions that you have, because I want to make sure that questions are answered. But today, I want to just do something a little different, go outside the realm of technical talks, and I want to make every single one of you understand the impact that you have on Go and its community. As you consider contribution, you take contributing to a project. There's the functionality of contributing code, of saying here's a bug. But there's also a ripple effect of how your actions affect the people behind the code. How do we contribute to society? Okay, so does everyone know about the Go Code of Conduct? I don't know how Code of Conduct translates, but there's a Go Code of Conduct. I am the conduct officer. That sounds official. I've never said that out loud, really. So there's a Go Code of Conduct, and the Code of Conduct can be found on the golang.org. It can be found at Google's open source website, because it's the same Code of Conduct. It's rad, it's wonderful. If anyone has any problems at this conference, any other in the community, you're welcome to email the list. It's me. And then, we take further action. The idea behind the Go Code of Conduct is that essentially you act or are some of these things instead of some of these other things. And I did ask for help with this. So I hope that this one is right. Is it wrong? Oh, is it right? Okay. Thank you. Because I had one of the organizers translate for me. So next time I learned my lesson with my other one. Don't try to use Google Translate by yourself. So let's focus on just what we want to be, right? I can't say these out loud because it would be even more embarrassing than I already am. But if we look at these words and what they evoke in us, they're really what we should aspire to be. We may not always be these things, but this is the goal. And if you recognize Go in its simplicity and its consistency, in its awareness of how it functions as a language, you'll recognize these values in your language as well as in yourselves. Okay, so we're going to go through a little mental exercise. We're going to do some brain stuff. And I'm going to ask you to just answer a few questions in your mind, not out loud, because it would get really loud in here. And I want you to internalize each of these questions. It's just an exercise of being human and just thinking about our future. But it's meant to help us think about how we interact. So we're going to start thinking about, what do we want? What type of community do we want to be, to aspire to be, to continue to be? What's important to us? Are those values important? So, some words. And I was going to translate these. I was. But obviously, one, it's good I didn't ask Google because that didn't work. And two, I didn't want to bother the organizers or the speakers. So forgive me for not translating these words. So proactive or reactive? Do we want to look for what will be necessary long-term solutions for the community? Do we want to be proactive, or do we want to take action in a reactive way based on what is happening on Twitter that day? Inclusive or exclusive? Are we a community that includes all types of people, all types of opinions, even those that differ from our own? Do we take those opinions, think about where they would come from? Do we pause and accept that someone from a different programming language, from a different community, could have a very different perspective, and that could actually be better for us? Do we accept differences, or do we simply dismiss them as not important? Now, this one is interesting because this has been a debate in the Go community and in the beginning of the language a few years ago. Are we an approachable language and community, or are we an elitist community? Are we a community that lets anyone, any developer of any level join, or was it only meant for the top 1%? Are we meant to make most developers more productive, or only some? And if the answer is most, have we provided all the materials all levels of developers would need to approach us? Or are we still represented as a little unapproachable? So for me, all of this could be boiled down into, are we nurturing or are we neglectful? Are we a community that fosters innovation, accepts differences, and attempts to become better based upon those differences? Or do we neglect and ignore anything that seems alien to us? Are we a community that is okay with being different, that is okay with being a contrarian sometimes? And can we reconcile those differences without being combative? And lastly, do we want to stick around? Are we one of those programming languages that's going to be taught in colleges, that's going to be around as a core language for a very, very long time? Or are we fleeting? Are we going to have a lasting impact on the cloud, on developers' lives? Or is Go just a fad? I mean, I really hope it's not, because I like my job. So I'm sure, did you think there was going to be answers? Because nope. Don't got any. It was just meant for you to think about a little bit. And I'm sure they evoked some emotions. Maybe some that you're even uncomfortable with. But let's assume that we want to be proactive, inclusive, approachable, nurturing, and sustainable. What's really behind all of that? Well, for me, I think that it is empathetic collaboration. And I actually believe that our biggest blocker to empathetic collaboration is one of our most powerful tools, the internet. More specifically, how we interact on the internet. Isn't it cute? Love it. Okay, so let's be real. People can be mean online. This is not new. This has been the way since online became a thing. There seems to be often a lack of accountability that has become our mode of communication and participation online. People feel online that they're anonymous, And the normal processing of a social contract seems to often disappear. Things people would never say out loud or in person get typed. In some ways, this can be liberating. We're able to say what we really think. But in other ways, it can be extremely harmful. For me, the ability to maintain compassion and empathy via online communications is one of the most undervalued interpersonal characteristics in our society today. It is the most important trait to have the moments before we tweet or answer a question on Reddit or give our opinion on Stack Overflow. Think about how your response would make you feel or someone else feel. Okay, why am I lecturing you on empathy and being nice, right? Like, why does this matter to the Go community? It's because first impressions genuinely matter. So I'm curious, because I try to do this in most of the talks I go to, how many people have been coding in Go for 2 years or more? Okay. Less than 1 year. Less than 1 year. Less than 6 months. Don't be shy. It's totally rad. I'm super excited to have you. Like, awesome. Let's give you a round of applause just for participating. Okay, so most of you have been coding in Go for less than a year, which don't feel like you're in the minority. Most of our community, if you take the 1.5 to 2 million people, and that number is double of what it was a year ago, most people have been coding for as long as you. Most people have not been coding in Go for more than a couple years. So why does this matter? Well, this is our primary user base. First impressions matter. You don't necessarily know the history of Go. You don't even necessarily know who the founders were. Every time you go online as a new community member and you see how people interact, you internalize that and you assume that's how Go is. That's how the Go community is. It matters. So, kind of like the next step, okay. I'm bummed because I didn't bring you stickers, but I know, I'm sorry. But the designer of the Gopher is Renee French. Does everyone know the designer of the Gopher? She's amazing. And I'm trying to get I know I'm digressing. I'm trying to get a sticker that really looks like her pencil form because I love it. So that's why these look a little fuzzy, because they're the original artwork. So kind of going to the next step of, okay, we want to be good, we want to be welcoming, we want to be awesome. We accept that the internet sometimes sucks because people are not always nice on it. There's another piece of being human, and that is that everyone has bias. How does bias translate in Portuguese? Bias. BS? BS? Okay. Did I say that right? You can tell me no. You really can. So I want to take a moment and look at me. Ha, you already are. Good. Okay, so you can clearly see that what I'm not, right? You can see that I am not blonde. My eyes are brown, like most of you. You've probably already made judgments about me. You've probably said, oh, she works at Google. And you've already said, oh, she's got a cool Women Who Go shirt on. Yeah, happy birthday. So the way I speak, how goofy I am, you're making a lot of judgments about me. And that's actually okay. It's okay to have bias. We have it because we're human, and humans have instincts, and instincts are what save us. So it's completely fine to have bias. It's human nature. But I'm asking you to rise above your bias and don't be driven by just your instincts to make judgment upon me just by looking at me or seeing me online, which is also my face eating a donut. I don't even really love donuts. You would make that assumption looking at that picture, right? So, yes, this is my favorite one. I think I have it on here too. Yep. Go for booty. I love it. But this is an interesting one for me, and I thought of this like last night as I was messing with these slides. I thought like, how does that gopher feel, right? I know that's a weird thing to think, but this talk is on empathy, and so I was like, how does it feel? What's that gopher thinking? No one, right? You can't really tell if I turn around. You don't really know what I'm thinking. Is the gopher happy, sad, mad, inquisitive? There are many things that you don't know by just looking in the surface, by just looking at someone's interactions online. You may not know that I've been homeless before. You may not know that I struggle severely, especially in the last year, with depression. Because I seem so peppy, right? I seem so happy. That's what I get all the time. You seem so happy. I'm like, yeah. And then I go cry. I'm totally fine. You may not know that my favorite dessert is pie. So if anyone knows somewhere to get some good pie, let me know. I don't know how pie translates, but it's very important to me. So that will be the next word that I learn. You may not know that 6 months ago, going out in public was giving me a panic attack. You have your bias, and that is okay. But I want you to take that bias and not internalize your judgments. Accept that it's there, but don't lean into it. Because the truth is, you really don't know. I just liked this picture. It's kind of a blank slide. I should have like transitioned into it sooner because it just makes me happy. And I kind of wanted, oh, you know what I'm going to do next time? I'm going to do this on my fingers. And then as this comes up, I'm going to do this. This is going to happen. Anyway, just going with it. Okay, so we have bias, but we want to be empathetic and we want to be collaborative. How do we do that? Let's just, to wrap it up, let's just break it down into 2 steps, which in my life I have found very helpful. As I train new teammates, they have found really helpful. As a manager, I have found really helpful. Just listen. That's what you're doing now. Thank you. Listen to what someone says. Consider your immediate reaction. The first thing that you think is full of your bias based on your experience, and it may dramatically differ from that other person. Especially online, you have time. You don't have to respond immediately. So you can internalize and accept your bias before responding. Understand your own assumptions about someone or something may not be true. Let me tell you, I usually, in an embarrassingly often, delete the first thing I write. In fact, I write it and I am so mad, and then I backspace because that's not right. I shouldn't be sending that. I have a temper, right? So I delete it because it's not nice and it's not productive. It doesn't get me anywhere. So accept that someone else's perspective will never be your own because you're not the same person, that you do not know everything about them and what's happening in their life today. Did they get sleep last night? Does their stomach hurt? Do they have a headache? Are they depressed? Are they sad? Are they happy? And then respond. Just take a moment, listen, and then respond. So in the context of our particular community and being a part of an online community especially, and even in person, which we do sometimes, like at events like this, let's try to be a community that more often than not simply shows gratitude. Let's say thank you. There are so many different ways that you can show gratitude, and it actually goes very far. The open source maintainers in the room know how limited thank yous can be. When you're getting issue after issue and comment after comment that is negative after negative, it can wear on you. And open source, unless you're, at Google, you're usually doing things for free. Giving tips online, you're usually doing that for free. It's usually not your job. So just simply saying thank you to someone is a very powerful tool that we have as humans. You can say thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. If that's a really nice way of like, I don't necessarily agree with you, but I appreciate that you were willing to share your thoughts with me. You can say thank you for that document change. I will look into it. Even if you're not going to take the suggestion, you say thank you. You can say, I appreciate the suggestion. I appreciate you taking the time and letting me know something was incorrect. The key is it doesn't matter how something is delivered to you. It doesn't matter what someone says to you necessarily. What matters most to your humanity is how you respond. Okay, so let's get deep. And again, thank you for listening on my talk about how to be nice. I feel very empowered to be kind to all of you. So I will genuinely say that I am grateful for every single one of you. And especially when I travel to a foreign country, I feel so much gratitude. Without this room, without this conference, without the other 19 conferences all over the world, I wouldn't have a job. Well, I would have a job, and I'd be very unhappy. I wouldn't be doing what I love. Everyone in this room is of value to me and of major value to the Go project. You're part of a community that has been growing for years. You are the people that will shape our community moving forward and set the standards for how we communicate, hence my talk on being nice. You'll decide if we use empathetic collaboration. You'll decide if this is how you want to act or not. It's up to you. And every single one of you is actually a contributor. I hope that what you take from this talk is very simple. Next time someone says something that you don't agree with or you don't like, you just pause and you think about, how can I have some empathy? And then you respond. Obrigado. Did I do it right? Thank you. No, not really. Do I take questions? Oh, I mean, I could. Yeah.
Have isso, perguntas? Alguém quer aproveitar uma pergunta? Que a gente ainda tem um tempinho para o coffee break, o pessoal ainda está 5 minutinhos ainda para o pessoal do coffee break, se alguém quiser aproveitar. Ela tá lá junto do Steve, então quem também quiser saber um pouco do produto, das algumas coisinhas do Go.
I don't know what he said, but
Trust on me.
But, I trust
I'm a
you.
trustworthy person.
I do. I trust you. But it doesn't have to be about my talk either. The questions, if there are questions.
Tá vendo? Foi o que eu falei, viu? Because last year I was talking that yes, you work in Google and very close to products team.
Yeah.
Maybe they can ask some question about the Go as a product itself.
Yep, so. That too. I can't promise I'll answer you, but you can definitely ask. Any questions?
Ali, tem uma pergunta, temos duas. Pessoal, será que você consegue um microfone de bastão para levar para o pessoal ali, por favor? Isso, por gentileza. Ô, Guilherme, só um minutinho. Eu acho que vai você primeiro, porque você está aí mais perto, depois ele aqui. Tá ali. É ele aqui, Guilherme. Isso.
Oi. First of all, thanks. Great talk.
Thank you.
So my question is about Go 3.0, but in particular, how do you guys from developer relations and the community perceived, number one, the, let's say, process Russ and team put in place to actually receive proposals, right? I think was a great move, like actually put some structure on the way the team received proposals. So did you feel like the community actually appreciated that? And second is how, what was your perception about the two or three main, let's say, points that are coming up in Go 3.0, like error handling and so on? Did you feel like the community actually acknowledged that and said, okay, that's the right way to go? So
Okay, so the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, is did the community appreciate kind of the new wave of proposal process and how we presented design proposals rather than just kind of saying like, here it is, right? Okay. So, full transparency is that the Go team traditionally has not been great at communication and explaining why and how things are done. And so this was the first time that these design proposals had ever been released prior to becoming an official proposal. So that's why we're calling them design docs instead of proposals. And those design docs were received very well. I think just the idea of being able to understand what the process looks like for these designs prior to becoming an official proposal is very empowering for the community. I think we're working a little bit on how to invite participation. And that's kind of like the next stage of my job with the DevRel team is to figure out how do we really make sure we're receiving feedback correctly. And then I'm sorry, the second part of your question was specifically like my thoughts on the three major changes in coming in Go2.
how the community perceived that? Like, how did you felt the community perception?
Yeah.
These questions are, especially if you put in perspective Vigo and Go modules and how like the debates and so on. I read a lot of the
Yeah.
debate and the community was very passionate. Some very angry about,
Yeah.
especially Russ
Yeah.
and Brian. So
Yeah.
that's my perspective. So about these new features, how do you feel the community's acknowledging it? Or
Yeah. So what I recognized kind of after a couple worldwide trips, so India and then London and now here, is that a lot of people don't even know the drama that was going on kind of behind the scenes. And so the perspective is usually a little bit more fresh. It's usually a little bit more like, oh, great. I'm glad that they're making improvements. And because Go doesn't change that often, there usually is a sense of trust in what Russ and company like decide to do, right? So overall, I find that people are excited, but they're more excited about the process and that it's design docs and then proposal, and then we'll move forward. And I think because of that, they're actually tied. Their excitement about the upcoming changes. I think there was one more back here.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. I really liked the t-shirt, by the way.
Oh, thank
you. My question was actually similar to his, and you already answered that, so I'm just going to skip the question.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, I appreciate your thoughts. Was there one more? Over here? None? Oh, one more. We have time for one more?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, well, we have a lot of time. If you have any questions. I went fast, sorry.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
I asking about your thought about the depression, and I was thinking, and how can a community help you, some members that are passing about depression, and how can we help about it?
Whew, that's a really wonderfully loaded question. So I think in my experience, the first and foremost thing is that it's such a private thing. And usually you don't know someone is going through it. Sometimes the person doesn't even know they're going through it. For example, my particular bout was, I don't know if this, again, translates, but I have PTSD from trauma. And I had not dealt with it for years. And then all of a sudden, my life changed, and I got, stepkids and an awesome partner and a new job. And then my brain was like, yo, I'm gonna mess with you now. And I was very silent about it. Even my partner didn't know I was going through it for months. I didn't even realize. So I think that the best way that you can help is that when someone finally says or acknowledges their sadness, or just says, I'm having a bad day, to just say, if you need anything, I'm there. Or at Google, for example, it's like, take a day off. Go take a day to yourself. Do what you need to do. And I have found that that's very empowering, just hearing that someone is there if they want to talk. But again, it's such a private thing that I think it's very hard for people to still articulate. I'm glad that I see online, this is, okay, positive online. I'm glad that I see more people talking about it and normalizing it and making it less of like some secret, right? Like 10 years ago, if I'd been like on stage, I have PTSD, people would have been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she just said that. And now it's like, okay, yeah, that's a thing and it happens. So yeah, I think just normalizing it also helps.
So, thank you very much,
Thank
Cassandra. Pessoal, o coffee está servido, fique à vontade. A Cassandra vai ficar aqui com a gente também o dia todo, então vocês têm oportunidade de falar outros momentos com ela. E a gente volta daqui a 20 minutos. Valeu!